Greetings, people of the internet. I recently participated in the Mizi Game Jam and I submitted a game that I dubbed Deal with the Devil. In this video, I'm going to go over the horrendous process I took to finish the game in time, as well as describe what all I learned from the entire experience. Without further ado, let's hop into this week's video. At 9 p.m. Central Standard Time on the 14th of August, the Mizi Game Jam had begun. In this particular game jam, all of the participants were handed the same art assets, which means creativity was going to go a long way. Although I had a myriad of ideas to potentially stick with, in the end, I chose to do a simple platformer. The story that I had decided to develop included the idea of the player signing a contract with the devil for eternal life. However, the devil, for obvious reasons, uses a loophole to pull the player into hell for eternity. The player is then tasked to hunt down the devil and secure your soul once more.
Fine. You leave me no choice. Prepare to be epically owned, noob.
It wasn't until Sunday that I could actually start on the project. I began by creating my player character. I mashed together a skull and the platformer guy from the asset pack to fully animate the main character. It turned out pretty sweet, and now it was time to whip up a movement script. Coding the movement was pretty simple. It just checks for input from the player and moves the sprite accordingly. I did tweak values that influenced the movement a lot throughout the course of completing this project. Afterwards, I configured the animations to the player to coincide with the script, and now I have the base of what a platformer is. Over the next hour, I tried to implement a scythe for the player to use, but I ran into so many different issues trying to manually animate the scythe that I had to completely scrap it in order to keep my momentum. In the end, I just decided to strip the pistol sprite from the asset pack and give the player a gun instead. Again, I wanted to do something interesting, so I tried to make the pistol rotate around the player, and it did not work the way I needed it to. I tried so many times to seriously get this down pat, yet I never found the solution that I was looking for. I gave up on that idea entirely and just kept the gun in one position alongside the player. Doesn't look too bad, but definitely not what I wanted it to be. After that, I worked a bit more on the weapon controller script and gave the player the ability to finally shoot. But what fun is shooting if we don't have anything to shoot? Rolling into Monday, it was time for me to add an enemy to the game. My idea was to create a hellhound that would be the quote-unquote patrol enemy. I ripped the doggo sprite alongside another skull and mashed them together to create the hellhound. I imported the little guy into Unity and ensured that the player had the ability to shoot at the hellhound. Next up, I decided to create some blood particles to spray from an enemy once they get hit with a bullet. I have to say, this was probably my favorite asset to create so far. I thought they looked pretty sick. However, I had to move on and I created a patrolling script for the hellhound and ended up with some awesome results. Or, so I thought. I did get everything working, however, and this is the result of what I completed so far. On Tuesday, I decided to focus mostly on creating the tile set for the game. I combined a few of the pieces from the asset pack together to create what I thought could turn into molten platforms. I forgot to mention that I used a palette from LowSpec in choosing the color scheme for everything so far, so that will definitely be linked in the description below. Although this was a tedious step, I finished up the tile set and moved on to creating the coins for the game. This didn't take too long to create the animations and implement everything into Unity. I reused the blood particles to create a coin particle system as well, which really looked awesome in game. To end off the day, I created some pikes that would be used to substitute spikes in a traditional platformer. Wednesday was probably one of the more productive days as I decided to create a lot of the different assets for the project. First off, I created a fire sprite from the asset pack and quickly conjured up a fire particle system to fit with the hellish theme. I wanted to have fire in a lot of the areas of the game because when you think of hell, I'm sure you think of fire. Afterwards, I moved on to creating some decorative tiles that I could use to make pillars and statues and such from. I also included a skull that I could merge with the existing magma tile set. Finally, I created some lava traps and implemented a few floating platforms that the player could jump through. I ended the day by adding a small portion of the first level. My initial idea was to create 5 levels before the end of the jam, but considering that I had already put a lot of time into implementing everything else, as you will see, I don't commit to my initial idea. I think my motivation died on Thursday because I didn't get to complete a whole lot. This was when I decided to add a bunch of audio to the game, which really helped tie everything together. However, for the past couple of days, for whatever reason, the Hellhounds like to glitch and flip way more than they needed to. This was seriously bugging me, as I knew I had spent too much time on everything else. This was a minor inconvenience and it really destroyed my mood. So at the end of this day, I recoded most of the enemy controller script already programmed. This was no fun. Friday was spent adding features to Insectoid Infestation, my other game, and editing a video, so I didn't touch this game much other than finally adding a health bar. Saturday was spent finishing up the first level and adding a new weapon type to the game. I tried creating a shotgun, however, I didn't think it would be as much fun as implementing an assault rifle, so I did that instead. I didn't record much this day because it really was just spent on refining everything. My poor self decided to pull an all-nighter in order to complete everything by the deadline on Sunday. I spent the final morning putting together a boss that I didn't even end up using. Bosses are a lot more difficult to create than I had originally imagined. So I spent the rest of the day creating the main menu as well as a game loop system. I had so many problems trying to figure out why my game loop wouldn't work that I had absolutely no extra time to implement everything else that I wanted to. 1 hour before the game jam was over, I submitted my game and went to bed because I had finally worn myself out. Man, I really didn't get to complete what I had originally envisioned, and the game may be only 1 level long. However, I learned a lot, mostly about scope, from participating in this game jam. A goal of mine was to join in a game jam by the end of the year, and I am really glad that I did. Next time, I want to ensure that I have the knowledge necessary to quickly finish what I want to create. If you are wanting to play the game, I will have a link to it in the description below. You'll have to play through the game to actually see the boss that I created in the end. I don't have a lot of experience when it comes down to actually finishing a project. That was rather apparent when it came down to the last few hours of the game jam. Although this sounds somewhat contradictory, I am going to halt the progress on Insectoid Infestation. I had decided that I need to spend a bit more time developing my skills as a programmer before committing to a bigger project like Insectoid Infestation. Don't think that I'm going to quit on the game though, because I do plan on coming back to it with new eyes. In the meantime, I am actually going to challenge myself to complete a small prototype game every week for a month in order to gain some needed experience for myself. I will still be releasing devlog videos of the games that I'm going to work on within the next month, so I hope you are all excited to see how well my skills improve over that time. If you enjoy the content, feel free to smack that subscribe button alongside the notification bell to stay updated with the progress of myself as a game developer. Follow my Twitter and Instagram for updates on projects that I'm working on or behind the scenes content. Also, Discord is the platform that I am on the most, so feel free to drop on by Stumpy Spaceship, my personal Discord server, for updates on when I go live on Twitch and or post on YouTube. I will also be accepting suggestions for any of my games or content on YouTube within my server as well. My social media will be linked in the description below. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.